Okay, this is how we're going to start. I'd like you to read this.
Is this the one you want me to read first?
Yep.
By myself?
Mm-hmm. Look at it for a second. Well, you read it.
I know the story about Sam Maverick, but go ahead. I'll read it again, though. I was surprised when I got the information that Florence sent me, and I even showed this in a dictionary to my wife. Anyway, 100 years before you were born. Got it.
What's your definition? Well, all right, what would you say a dictionary definition of a maverick is?
Wrong. Completely wrong. The whole American language is based on words like that that are wrong. That's a lost calf or a cow. A lost calf or a cow, he wonders. The stamper was not energetic enough in those days to go out in the snow and travel 400 or 500 yards finding one and branding him. A lost person, a lost animal, you see, can be called, they call him maverick, but we have changed the meaning of the word for rebel. We have changed the meaning of the word for someone who's different in the mean line. And I'm not Webster. So, to make you very happy, Lance, because you're doing a very beautiful job here the way you lit up, and I have to take this damn sweater up pretty soon, I'll buy the Webster or any other dictionary definition of what I think they would like people to understand a maverick is. A maverick is a human who does something a little bit different than the others. A maverick can be an inventor or a painter or a sculptor. Doesn't make any difference. A maverick to me is someone that has an idea and has an erection that goes with it, so nothing can stop him to get that idea across. That's why I accept this definition of the word maverick. One is coming from within and knowingly. Now, if we could get into the brain of a stray calf, yes, I'll buy Webster. And we say, what are you up to? He said, I'm running away from them. Why? I don't like what they're doing. I don't like the way they eat. I don't like the way they crap. I don't like the way they drink. I don't like anything about it. I don't like to be rounded up. I don't want to be in behind barbed wire. Who the hell do they think they are? And I'm busting out. Now, if we could speak to a calf like that, I would buy that definition 100%.
Do you think of yourself as a maverick?
Yeah, story-wise. I never said I was American. I never thought about it until Florence. Met her in some place in honor of Whitmark. And she said she's doing a story about mavericks, and I got a big kick out of it. Because here I hear the word again. Gray used it. Henry B. Altshuler, the silk stocking, the Shoshone Indian novelist. Then Zane Grey picked his stuff up. Altshuler was #1. He started using all these stories about the maverick riding into town. It winds up eventually with Hart and Tom Mix and Hoot Gibson, right up to pardon me, Mitchum, Wayne, and of course the classic of them all that George Stevens directed, Shane.
Do you think, thinking about the movie business, it's possible for money people to be mavericks?
Completely. You have to have, a maverick has to have, the idea to me is maverick. The idea is maverick. Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, when that came out, Depression days, arid, a lot of people on the move. It took a lot of guts for Fox to buy that book. It took a lot of guts for Ford to make it. Tremendous guts in those days. When you have a picture end, I'm giving you a studio, that's a maverick. A director there who's a maverick. The writer. Where Jane Darrell, the mother, says to Henry Fonda's son, he's a fugitive, he's on the fleet, where you going? Where will you be? He says, wherever there's a cop hitting a striker with a club or hitting so-and-so, wherever there's a cop. That's great in those days. That's a maverick to me. The whole studio to me was a maverick.
Do you think the best filmmakers are mavericks? Or do you think it's possible for people to be governed, be controlled, and still be mavericks? Still make good movies?
Yes, I can give you an example. Oh, sure. I think Riskin was on a script. Try to remember the name of the man who wrote it. It was called Opera Hat. Samuel Hopkins Adams. And Capra directed the Cone of Columbia. And it was at a day where everything, as normal, from the 1880s, 1990s, was very patriotic. And it showed the workings without going inside the law of deeds goes to town. That was a whole maverick approach to the gang up of a man by a legal system. Then, I don't know who wrote the original, I think of it. Then they topped it with Smith Goes to Washington. Now this is maverick copy to me, may not be to you. Because the other studios didn't do it, and they had all the chances, each one making 50 pictures a year in their 6 studios, that's 300, to do these kind of stories. To show the shenanigans going on between the senator and the congressman and outside lobbyists and all that. That to me is a maverick.
You could say that there's an equation for a director of what it takes to make a movie. There's the studio that puts up the money, the producer, let's say, whose job it is to get the movie done, and there's the audience that goes to see it. And would you say that one of the definitions of a maverick, or that a maverick might be willing to alienate any one of those three, to take chances with the audience, to take chances with the money, to take chances with the production?
No, first of all, that's a very damn good question, but you got a hook in that question, my boy, a hook. You cannot alienate any of these three because beforehand there is an understanding. If the man is an independent, it's no difference than if it's a studio. They both go out to seek the money. And the money wants that money returned with a profit. That's number one. So they will not go for anything that'll alienate them anyway. They'll tell you if you have an idea and you're so hot about it, you raise the money, you hawk your house. This is independent. Or the studio will do the same thing. But when it is a big contradiction here. When you go to a studio, it's not they say we're going to make a picture just like an independent. It's altogether different. They have a program. So many musicals, so many westerns, so many this, so many that. The blessed part about a studio is once you go in, you, Lance, you say, I have a story I want to tell. That's what you would say to Zanuck, because that's the first thing he'd ask you. What do you want to, what's your story? What do you want to tell? There's nothing else wrong. The money deal takes place in 5 minutes, 2 minutes. They never bother you after that. If there's any problem at all, it's something weak on the creator's part. The easiest thing is to do a picture against God. The easiest thing is against religion. The easiest thing is against rules and regulations and laws. The easiest thing is against animals. Kill them all. Wild animals, contagious. They don't go for that at majors. And for 70 years, they did quite well. Very well, adhering to those rules. But when you go to a major studio, and I'll give you a very good example, the best example I can give you, which is a picture that was not made, is the best example. When I went to Fox, Zanuck said, what do you want to say? What's the story? First thing, I met the heads of every studio, and they all talked beautifully. I love them. Showed me cast lists. I had a little picture out that I was cleaning up. It took 10 days, and my picture was making more money than theirs. See? And it was in the trades. And the overflow for my picture on Broadway, we opened it Lower State, went to the other ones, and they were in color. Now, I was going to do a newspaper story then. He said, we're going to do one. I said, forget it. What else do you want to do? I said, I want to do something, speaking about Maverick, I didn't look at myself as a Maverick, seriously. I'm too close to that definition, that's why. I want to do a picture that's never been done. And Zanuck said, every picture's been done, and I've done them. I've made them from everything at Warner Brothers to 20th Century Fox. Anything you mention. Well, you haven't made this one. As a matter of fact, I said, I'll give you the title. I bet you 500 cigars. He said, make it 1,000. I said, okay. But I smoke my cigars. I'm going to win. How the hell do you know you're going to win? He said, you don't think I would bet if I thought there was a chance of losing? I said, you've lost. I've lost with 2 words. I said, yes, but I don't want your decotinized cigars. I don't like that. That's like they take the tobacco out of the cigar. He smokes a cigar without the nicotine. It's like a fellow having a romance with a couch, and he calls the couch Sarah, and he makes love to Sarah. But Sarah's a couch, and it's not Sarah. So he said, I got it. What's your 2 words? And I said, Red Square. This is 1952. And he thought. Pushed a button. I didn't have to tell him the story. And the secretary came in. He said, what's your cigar people? What's the address, the phone number of your cigar people? What are you smoking? I said, Cabana Grande. Send, all right. I'm giving you a pretty good example.
Yes.
You don't know what Red Square means yet. He did.
You want to take a drink of water?
Camera roll 4 now. On to camera roll 4.
Whenever you're ready. I won the bet. He said, what's the story? Now we go into Maverick, without me knowing it. 24 hours in the life of a Russian soldier, a guard. He's a sentinel at Lenin's tomb called Red Square. I want 1 camera, a cameraman, no one else with me. I want to go to Russia, live there for 3 months. I want to do the story of this man, and through him, we will see how does a Russian live in 24 hours of the life of this man. What's a bathroom like? What's their subway like? How do you get a divorce? How do you get a separation? How do you get a raise? How do you get a job? What's the damn penalty for this or that or this? What's the everything that we don't know behind the Cold War, everything. And it's a personal story of a man trying to hang on to his child, by the way. The whole thing is not a documentary at all. Not at all. His wife left him, and that's all. He said, forget it. Why? Russia. We're not at war. We are. I said, look, I'll write the thing there. They can look over my shoulder. All I want is an American cameraman. No. We don't want anything like that. We can't even think of it. And I said, you know the president, you and your studio put a lot of money up for the election. You pick up a phone, Mr. Zanuck, they'll listen to you. They won't bother me. No. And he said, no studio would go for that. And I don't think you can get independent money to go for it.
Well, when the classic studio bosses kind of passed from the scene, Zanuck, Mayer, Harry Cohn, Jack Warner, did your struggle get any easier or harder, or how did that affect?
Did my what?
Your struggle to get movies financed and get them made. Were the studio bosses easier to work with, those kind of guys, than the independents who emerged afterwards?
Well, I'm a little confused. First, I only work with 3 independents, then I'll go back to that later. Independent just mean where you get the money. To me, this whole situation here should not be the independent filmmaker. That's a good word. But it's beginning to disperse into how you get money and how you do this and how you do that in contrast to the studio. And that, to me, is not why I'm here. Independent filmmaker means a man or a woman who has an independent idea and wants that on the screen. I don't give a damn where the money comes from. I don't care if there's 16 individual tailors and 4 barbers that back somebody, or a major. That has nothing to do with why I'm here. I like the whole idea of independent filmmakers. That should be pounded. And every young man and woman should be independent with your story, with your idea, with your imagination. Let it go. Don't copy. Don't be a clone. Let a studio make a picture, and if it takes in $100 or $200 million and they want number 2 picture, number 3, that's their headache. And it's their business. It's not ours. It's not our business to be envious of them. You can't waste time being jealous. You waste more time trying to figure out how can I give them something that'll make money. Forget it. They're masters at that. They're masters at that. That's why they're big. And the others are little. Always remember that. They're champions, and the others are flyweights. Because they go out to say, what can we do to have money? And while you're doing that, if you can give them a different story, a different approach while you're making money, they love you. Now to get to your answer to your question. Yes. Yes. One studio will follow another. Yes. Example. I was shooting in Japan, and Joshua Logan visited us. I introduced him to Joe McDonald, who gave him some shots to cut down his location hunt for Sayonara, a brand new picture for Warner's. What are you doing? I said, a little melodrama here. Discharge GIs, take over the Tokyo, enter with the gangs and all that. Bring crime, bring American crime to Tokyo. Is that your story? I said, yeah. He said, everything's, I mean, would they like it here? This is 10 years after the war. It's the first American studio to make a picture, and a major at that. He said, what's your story? I said, nothing. He just wanted to follow, meet some Japanese girl and walk into the sunset. Ah. Maverick. Not me. Zanuck.
Action.
After Logan looked at all these photographs that McDonald showed him to save him time on location hunting, and I explained again what my story was, he said, what do you mean the white man walks off into the sunset? That's the end of the picture? I said, yes. He said, who are you doing this? I said, Fox, 20th. This is Logan, and I'm crazy about it. He said, who okayed that? I said, Zanuck. The man ends going off with a Japanese woman, yes, and the music will come up nice. Very beautiful, a happy ending, period. He went back, he shot his picture, he talked to Warner about it, and from the book, bestseller, from the play, smash, and now a big picture with Brando. They changed it. And the picture ends. Not with Committing Harry Carey, which is a remake, naturally, of Mad Butterfly, but Brando running down the street, the intercut, and it's getting closer and closer to her belly because the white man didn't come back as he promised her. He smashes the door open and grabs her. Boom! Puccini! And they have a hit. Warner's was smart. If Darryl Zanuck okayed it, he had an idea. It was time. This is not the days of Richard Barthelmess and Brooklyn Blossoms. That's to answer your question. I could give you an overall answer. That's bad, Lance. I gave you a detailed question of how in one studio, because of another studio, okayed an idea that was away from the main line, that has not been done. And they did it.
I hold the opinion that the story is maybe the most personal part of your film, the most personal part of your films. And the story is also the easiest for other people to tamper with because it's in the form of paper and people pass it around and look at it and all that. It's maybe a little bit more difficult to tamper with films when they've been shot. So how do you protect the story when you're writing it, when you're showing it to people, when you're trying to get funding?
There's another good question. I learned in the hard way, for me easy, but the hard way for a lot of people. I'm not talking about independence now. At a major, when you are directing a picture, and you want to change it, really change the dialogue and all this and that, you cannot. The boss of the studio sends the writer down. That's why he paid that man a lot of money to write that script. It's a dream to them if you write the script and direct it. A dream. Because you are not going to do anything to hurt your copy. Never. And if you can top it from a directorial viewpoint, which you're supposed to do, the original thing was at least add 10%. They don't bother you. However, when you do have anything and you hit a very sensitive point, they may chicken a little bit in the middle of shooting or after seeing the rough cut. That middle or near the end, we ought to go easy on this. See, that's now story-wise you're talking about. You're right. You have to depend on the man running the studio, as Warner, Cohn, or Zanuck. Sometimes you must remind him that the whole deal was done when he said, a year ago or 8 months ago, what story do you want to tell? And I tell him. And I watch his face. And he listens. And he looks away just very briefly, and he says, make it. Now, that's enough for me. Now, when I remind that, he'll go. But he has other people, chairman of the Board of Aldermen, chairman of the Board of Directors in New York, and he has sales department people around him, and they do say this may be a little trouble in such a zone, such a region of the United States. That's how they sell it. See, it's up to him. It's only up to him. On China Gate, very rough. And he said the same damn thing. And I told him the story in one sentence. I don't want to go to the details on it now, but I watched him, and he said, make it. Now, the only problem sometimes they give you, and it's not a problem in me, it was an accolade to me. It was wonderful. He said, on this one here, let's make it in color, and let's make it away from me, I say. For instance, this is a story of Ho Chi Minh. Nobody ever heard of Ho Chi Minh. Nobody used him. There was no such thing as that. This is the story of Indochina. This is before it was Vietnam. And you want to make this to let us know we followed up 100%. We fought in every place the French did, and they were whipped. Our bivouacs where the French were. Every place. Everything. And we fought against the same general, Giap, and we fought against a big shot, Ho Chi Minh. Now, he came on a set when we were shooting that at RKO Pathé, not far from Tara. And he saw the big picture of Mao Zedong, and he saw Stalin, and he saw another fellow, a scraggly-looking, lean fellow, little hanging mustache, or beard. It was a beard. I like that, son. He said, who's that fellow? I said, that's Ho Chi Minh. Tell me about him. Assistant pastry cook in the Ritz in England. Speaks about 7 languages. He's the head of that country. A pastry cook in a hotel? I said, an assistant pastry cook. He said, what a man! And the reason I fell in love with him, that's Horatio Alger. That's it. Anybody who's from rags to riches to Darryl Zanuck, that's a man. That's the story, and he went for it.
You know, most first films for directors lack a kind of an identity. There's directors struggling to find a style, struggling to find a look. Your film had okay, we'll say this one. Action. I'm going to put that question aside about I shot Jesse James for a moment. In the era when Zanuck was in power and running things, and Cohen and others, one man made a decision. It seems today that those kind of production decisions are made by committees.
Yes.
What effect does that have on films that are unusual or films that are personal or independent?
2 effects. One, it takes a longer time for a confirmation or denial. 2, the length of that time can sometimes water the whole idea that excited...
Interrupt you for just a second. Let's start this over again. I'll re-cue you with a question. But this is one I'd like to start with an I. Like maybe I think today, or it seems to me today.
Oh, you want one of those?
Yeah,
Oh, very, very good. Now I'm getting into the editorial page on department. This is news department. You never say I. You never.
So anyway.
All right. I think there is a vast change. There has been a vast change with the committees. 2 or 3 young men, very nice young men in each studio, and their counterparts, 2 or 3 in New York, and they have to get together and consolidate their enthusiasm or denial, one or the other. And I think what's bad about that is that when you get a independent filmmaker, and remember, independent, I don't mean outside a major studio. An independent filmmaker is a man who gets an idea, or a woman by himself or herself. It's not going to a studio where they buy your book and somebody has an adaptation or a play, and they have this writer or that writer or that writer, and they have them adapt it, and they have them write a screenplay. That's not what I'm talking about, because the independent then was the writer of the book or the writer of the play. If it's a sonnet, a play, a poem, I don't give a damn. That's the writer. That's the independent writer. Margaret Mitchell was the independent writer. I don't give a damn if there are 12 writers on Going So When. She was the independent writer on that. She had an idea and put it on paper.
And what effect does that independent...
Now, it has an effect on this. The more you discuss things, they start to nitpick, sew, re-sew, different subject matters, different nuances in the original story you brought them, a script. And when you do that to anything, I don't care what it is, and this is, this is not my idea, this is Thomas Edison's, that if he had listened to all the people who had the most wonderful ideas of what he was working on, there never would have been any light in the world. And I'm using him as a very good example, because his mother, he might have had an idea. Well, let his mother invent it. There are too many people who say, wouldn't it be good if he went out that window and came in this, and what if we change this, and what if? Now, that generally is when they are earning their salary. This is what I mean. So what I don't like is that when you're the head of the studio, he's not worried about his job. Most of them own the studio. He doesn't have to impress anyone. He says yes or no. If he says, there's one thing I don't like about it, then it's up to you, the independent mind I'm talking about now. I don't like this, then there's no deal. Because that's not what you had in mind.
Let's go back to actually Jesse James. That movie could be nothing but a Sam Fuller film. And the thing I'm curious about is what prepared you to have a personal style. I'd like to know what kind of background you brought to that first movie.
Okay, good. Number one, I'm not going to go into the background of it too much because I met Lippert.
I meant what prepared you personally.
Yeah, well,
how were you able to tell a cameraman how to frame a shot? How were you able to tell the editor cut here? How were you able to, what preparation did you have for that kind of thing?
Because I used the camera the way I used a typewriter. Using that picture, if I covered a bank robbery, whether it's in Jersey City or Lower New York, and if I began describing the place, the city, the block, the windows, the people, the bank, I'd be fired from my newspaper. All he's interested in, did you talk to anybody? Did they catch anyone who nailed, did they nail anyone? Yes. Did you get anything out of them? Yes. Did you get anything out of a teller? Yes. Did you get anything out of a customer? Yes. Write it. So all I wrote was the expressions in their faces. Good heavens. And I realized that when I interviewed them, the sweat on the fellow on one side of the goddamn counter was the same sweat as the man on the other. And you would know, I would know which is which. Because when I talked to a couple of clerks in the Jersey City National Bank, I talked to 2 or 3 men. They looked like criminals to me. They nailed one man. They had shot him out in the street. They pulled him into the bank. And he looked like a very nice young man, an up-and-coming banker, see? So I went out of my way to describe their faces, their expressions, whether it's a false grim. See, don't forget, I can do this now because nobody's arrested for homicide. If it's homicide, I couldn't do this. So I'm answering your question. I knew that faces to me, especially a bank robbery, because it's an unfair. I hate bank robbers. I hate them because they're armed and a lot of people are unaware. I like Gerald Chapman. That's a bank robber. You go into a bank with a note, please give me $850,000 and 50s and 100s and 500. Thank you, signed Gerald Chapman. No gun. And if I did a story on him, I couldn't get that same effect.
But how are you prepared to direct actors, to get performances out of actors? I mean, what in the newspaper business would prepare you for that?
Well, I met the actor. I picked John Allen on account of Harvard Hawks' Red River, Sherry Millard. And Robert Lippert said, "But hey, this picture costs no money. The picture costs $106,000. It's a 10-day picture. So we'll put the master part of the money into a star." I said, "You're not going to get a star, but I don't know what money you're going to spend. Who cares about the name in a thing like this? We want to do the story of the difficulty of killing a son of a bitch when he doesn't know you're going to kill him, and especially if you're indebted to him, but more than that, if you're in love with him. That's what I want to tell, and I can't tell that with medium and long shots and towns just ordinary saloons and what you see in a regular Western. I just couldn't do that. So
How did you convince Lippert to give you the job?
he wanted to buy a script. He wanted me to write a script.
Lippert.
I wrote 3 scripts after the war. See? This is under my name. And I got paid in advance. One from Warner's, for Murder. That's the name of the script. RKO read the script, hated it. Warner's passed. Warner's passed. Charlie Feldman was my agent. Because I used to be a ghostwriter. That's how I met him. He contacted me and I ghostwrote. Before the war. I wrote 3 screenplays, originals, under my name. They all were passed and paid for. My mother called me from New York, and she was in 18th heaven. You mean that you write a script and they don't make it?
But what I mean is, do you remember what you told Lippert?
Yes, I know exactly.
You said, give me the picture.
No, I didn't say it that way. My mother was involved in it. I'm trying to tell you that. She said, if you keep selling these scripts and they don't make them, we're going to be very wealthy. They would pay me $75 a script in advance. Charles K. Feldman said, you pay him, he'll write it. If you pass, it reverts. And all of them, when they passed, they said, we wouldn't touch it. Nobody will touch it. The 3rd one was at MGM. That's when my mother called and said, this is great. As long as they don't keep, if they don't make the stuff you write, we're going to be very wealthy. That's a hell of a slap in the face. I got a call from Lippert. He knew a man whose wife was the secretary to Charles Duell, of Duell, Sloan Pierce, a publisher that published my books. That's how he reached me. He said, I read the 3 scripts. He was a candy butcher a long time ago as a boy. He sold popcorn. He was a dish salesman for theaters. He grew up in theaters, and he wanted to be a producer. He said, I love what you've written, but I agree with the studios. My God, you can't expose the police department of New York. You can't expose Senator McCarran and the DAR. My 2nd story was called Uncle Sam. And the 3rd one was how easy it is to rob a bank and get away with it. Just catch the robbers as a cop. Kill them all and go to Rarotonga or Hawaiian Islands. And they all passed. So I said, you want me to write a picture? Yes. I said, on one condition. I want to direct it. I want to show a certain person that the thing will be on the screen. Because she really said, this is great. Keep this up for 3 years. We both retire. And she knew that my content would never be accepted. She knew it. She never saw a picture exposing the police. Whoever saw a picture? 21 cops on a roof. This is New York City. Real. Commit suicide. Bam. Judge Wilburn, a woman, and a male judge from another roof. Jump. Bam. That's 23 people beginning the investigation of ICE. Ooh, I covered that story, and I opened the picture like that. Anyway, so he said, you can do it. I went through certain things. He passed on it. He passed on it. And I wanted to do the story of Cassius, and when he said, oh, those fellows hanging around the damn Roman baths, with those bed sheets, nah. I don't want to do a story about those fellows. I said, what do you mean, those guys? He said, you know what I mean. Hanging around the bats, all that. You know what I mean. I said, you mean homosexuals? He said, I don't like it. I don't like guys hanging around with togas around baths, and sponging each other and all that stuff. So I went through 6 or 7. I want to do assassins. I'm not interested really in anything but who got the idea to assassinate and who executed. Cassius got the idea. Brutus did it. Okay, now, that's a big thing. Now, who's guilty? That's what I'm interested in. Because I covered too many stories of somebody who put an idea into your mind, Len, so rough that you went and killed your mother. Now you're interrogated and you're charged on Capital One. Yeah. And you don't want to say that I gave you the idea. So that always bothered me. Who's guilty? And I told him, when I finally mentioned the last man, I said Ford.
This is going to be camera roll 6 now.
This is one I want to begin with an I, too.
All right.
And so the question is, how did you get performances out of the actors in I Shot Jesse James?
Ernie Miller was my cameraman. He said, what's your first shot? I told him this man's face. I wanted to cover the whole screen. I talked to the actor. I said, I don't want any expression from you except a little touch of suspense. I don't want the people to know who the hell you are. I don't want them to ever know what you are. That I recall from the Jersey City National Bank, my own viewpoint of watching faces. And I made 3 or 4 shots Then I moved back for one shot to let people know what's happening. It's just there's one lobby guard there for Jesse with a Winchester. I wanted one quick flash. Now we know it's a robbery because we just see face, two men looking at each other. It was very easy. The actors loved it. I didn't realize how, at the time, actors love it when they're beginning to realize, any actor, that their face is filling the screen, and I did a long time on them. That's how I did it. I describe a shot to the Ernie. That time was Ernie Miller. That was my first cameraman. And it was very easy for me. Very easy. Everything fell in. The only thing that was not easy was we shot that at Republic. He made a deal for the exteriors at Republic with Yates, Herbert Yates. And the first shot was the last shot in the picture, which is night for night. And it's the man walking toward another man. He says, turn around. And this is Robert Ford, who already shot a man in the back, and now he's telling another man, turn around, and he's facing his back. That's the first shot at night. And I walked it with John 20 times. He's a very old friend of mine, a wonderful, an iron. Very good. So is Preston. But I wanted that walk to be simian. I wanted a gorilla. And I was lucky. Nothing to do with direction. There's an old railroad track there in Republic, and there's stars. So I said, you walk between the tracks, and you put your foot. You have to lift your foot, otherwise you'll trip. So I get a gorilla, an apish quality. Because when you're creeping up to a man and to his back, I want everybody to see how you are. You're disintegrating right in front of that camera, as far as I'm concerned. You shot a guy in the back once, and now you're going to do it again. This is not John Wayne. John Wayne would never even do that. John Wayne would never face a back of a man, and he did it. But my big problem, to answer your question, was when I'm ready, I said, let's go. And I wait. And I wait, nothing happens. And the assistant came over. He said, listen, just say action, and that shit will hit the fan. And I said, action. Ooh, he's walking in the camera, started moving. The light starts following him. Oh, it was just wonderful. Action is the word I love.
Can you think of can you name some directors that you admire from any era?
That's strictly a personal effrontery to me, but I'll try, because I don't want to, if this is seen anywhere by people, I don't want one banana head to say, why the hell didn't you mention me? Do you see? Now let's word it. Do you mind very much if you word it differently? Are there any directors that impressed me a lot? Or you asked me directors I like?
Now let's say, can you think of other directors who you recognize as fellow Mavericks, who are willing to take chances, who are willing to struggle to get independent stories made?
Yes.
That stick out in your mind?
I can go right from as I think I told someone this, the first director I met, you would call him a maverick. He made a silent picture called The Rescue with Ronald Coleman and Vilma Banky. I think he shot it in Jamaica for Samuel Goldwyn. His name was Herbert Brennan. I didn't know I'd meet him, but looking at that picture much later on again, first, it was the first location picture. That's a Maverick. And no one in Hollywood. That's why they came to Hollywood. They had everything in Hollywood. Sun, sand, mountain, a desert, and the Pacific. And above all, this light. To me, that, back in my mind, I never thought of movies, but I thought that was a pretty gutty guy. And for your information, he built the sewer system there. Goldwyn paid for it. And there's a plaque there. That, to me, is a man who did something where it became very popular many years later, where you shoot where things happen and you have a location, and it became a vogue for a while. That vogue started a kind of a semi-panic in Hollywood, in the unions and among the workers, because you are now moving away from a studio. The panic became a little bit increased when you realize that it's easier to use a crew where you're going than taking a crew. And it's pitiful that even that thing entered, because the expense of taking a crew, I'm not a major studio, not independent, it's so little. Even if it's 70 crew, 75 people, they usually will give you 2 planes, one for crew and cast, the other for equipment, 4 generators, lot of lights, cables galore. That's the most inexpensive thing if you're going to make a picture, because that's what saves you the money. A crew and all the equipment. And I think they're wrong in ever even getting concerned about it. They should get concerned if they pay $10 million, $8 million for one man, actor. Yes, I can see the concern there.
Earlier, you mentioned admiring Robert Altman, and one of the reasons that people sometimes think of Altman as a maverick is that he's the first director in modern times to not make it terribly easy for the key characters to be understood. In other words, backgrounds sound...
Excellent, yes, a good description. I couldn't have put it better.
Another example, because I want you to...
Very good.
I want you to talk about this, is Marty Scorsese's decision to shoot Raging Bull in black and white in an era when black and white was considered to be out of fashion. We don't want to make black and white pictures. So if you could, I guess I would restate the question by saying, do you recognize in Robert Altman and Marty Scorsese a maverick spirit, and give me an example of it?
Yes. Particularly in Marty, when he made a picture of the Raging Bull, that was the first type of a fight picture. It's a fight picture. They made them many years ago. The Patent Leather Kid became a big hit with Richard Barthelmess. Silent. Then Gable, and then many, up to Gentleman Jim. And always, number one, the hero would never throw a fight. And number 2, would win. But above all, is where the maverick comes in. He was a nice man. He was your lead. And Marty shattered that. That's number 1. Now, for my own experience, I don't know Altman. I met him a couple times, I don't know him. I saw a picture he made, and it's close to me. I don't know how it did, I'll give a damn. I think Richard Gere was in it, and I didn't know about Richard Gere. I think it might have been called GI. It was a GI title. It was a war title. And I was stunned. He did something I never even thought of. That, to me, is really independent thinking. Oh, great. And I didn't think of it because I was ignorant. This, to me, is the greatest example. He did a story of a cook in the army, sergeant, in England, while guys were training for Normandy. It never dawned on me, we're in the southern part of England, that somewhere there were soldiers living in England. We know that because they were living in England when we hit them from Sicily. But these are non-combatants. But he shocked me. What guts! I know every guy in my outfit, they would react because he did something I never expected. There's a whole war going on of a man who cooks and the staff and the girl and her father and they're British, and the whole idea of another war going on, which is actually to feed us. I don't know if you know what I mean, but that to me was so original. I would put that number 1 independent. I was stunned. I told my wife I never dreamed that this was going on. I never knew there were soldiers in England doing this, because most of them were there to help the British along the coast in case there's any invasion. Yeah, but these are not really trained combatants. They're not. And to me, John Ford tops them all with the finished work on the screen as far as independent filmmaking. Now, this is for majors even.
Well, you have insights into John's Ford work that the viewers won't have. So maybe you could say about what Ford's work means to you. I mean,
well, number 1, the most important thing is he was always called a right-winger or whatever it is, being friendly with Duke Wayne and Bond and all that nonsense. I'd like to see any bleeding heart movie maker with an idea to top what John Ford did and at our major studio. When he did Grapes of Wrath, that's what he directed. That was a tremendous social step forward about the first feeling of the unfairness of a cop's billy, a nightstick, against human flesh. That's the first picture that hit it hard, very hard, as far as I'm concerned. See, when he made How Green Was My Valley.
Quick, for a second.